Hey, everyone, welcome to the IGDA Des Moines chapter. Well, our first digital presentation. We have something pretty cool for you tonight. It is talking about a little bit of AI for you. So, we've brought someone in special to talk, and we will have Franco give a quick introduction. But first, just one thing to announce. Thanks everyone for being patient with us. Last month we did cancel. We waited until the very last moment, and I'll tell you, it hurt a little bit for us to cancel. We love seeing you all, but hey, we're gonna try this as much as we can. Now, as always, you can feel free and hop on Slack and join us. The link is right over on one of these sides of me. My camera's backwards to me, so hop on Slack, continue the conversations there, as well as take a look at the Twitter. We will maybe be getting some content up on there. Uh, Also, take a look on the Facebook page, our Facebook group. Um, there's also one other thing to keep in your pocket is the IGDA Discord. Now, this, of course, is the parent IGDA Discord. It's not our personal, but we do have a channel on there. So if you want to hop on there and continue conversation there, I'm sure that others will join as well. One last thing, kind of just from a little bit of growth within the community, just trying to get us all together. We've popped up a couple Minecraft servers. Right now, we do just have one. It's Java. I'll pimp it right now real quick. The Minecraft server. Hop on it, join us. Java Minecraft server. Get on our Slack. Go get the details on that and join a few of us. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Franco to give a quick introduction. So, Franco, ground is yours.
Thanks, Brian. It's Gianfranco Berardi. Everyone calls me Franco. I run GB Games. 2011, I went to my first and only GDC and hopped out of the Indie Game Summit. There was a post-mortem, and I thought I'll just watch that on Gamasutra later, and went to the AI Summit. And that's when I first saw Dave Mark. I have since seen him and met him in Omaha when running the game development group there. Um, he's a fixture in the game AI community, and it's my pleasure to introduce him here. Thank you, Dave.
Well, thank you, GB. Yeah, I'm a fixture. It sounds like I should be a lamp or a toilet or something like that. That's I don't know what that means, but no, thank you. It's good to be along with you folks. I wish I could be there in person. Actually, I think a lot of us wish we could be anywhere in person the way things are going, right? But yeah, there was a bit of a discussion about what would be good to talk about, and so my pretentious title for this is Subconscious Fishhooks. Always put a colon in your titles, by the way. Leveraging the player's own psychology for believable characters. Pizza? And apparently, I'm being summoned for pizza. So, um, again, my name is Dave Mark, as mentioned, the president and lead designer of Intrinsic Algorithm. Wife and I started as an independent game studio many billions of years ago, back during the Civil War, I believe it was, and kind of transitioned out of that early on. But in the meantime, I also co-founded along with Steve Raymond the AI Game Programmers Guild. We're up to about 660 of us around the world, and of just professional AI programmers in the industry. And then along with Steve Raven, about 12 years ago, I started, co-founded and hosted the AI Summit at GDC, as Franco mentioned. And I was the host for the first 10 years of that. Also, author of the book Behavioral Mathematics for Game AI. I've written for a number of other compilation books, not only on AI, but on game design as well. And I used to write for the now defunct Game Developer magazine back in the day. I am an AI consultant now, though, working for game studios around the world. Notably, for example, I was with the Storybricks team on the canceled EverQuest Next. No, it was not canceled because of the AI. I then went on to work for ArenaNet on the Guild Wars 2 expansion, Heart of Thorns, and now ArenaNet runs entirely on my AI architecture. I then went on to work for John Smedley, who had founded SOE, and of course I knew him from the EverQuest Next days at his independent game studio, Pixel Mage Games, on Hero Song, which was a pixel art. Let's see, hang on, try putting these words together. Um, online multiplayer pixel art roguelike. Not something you hear often put together in one thing. But I am probably most famous these days for being the guy that got hit by the car at GDC in 2018 and almost killed. So yeah, it's really weird to, finally get back to looking at the internet a month or two later and realize everybody's been writing about you. And I do have some fantastic pictures if anybody wants to see of all of the different breaks, including the two 12-inch bolts to my pelvis. So be that as it may. What I'm covering here today, it certainly involves AI, kind of what I do, but it's not necessarily an AI talk. It could also involve animation, but it's not necessarily an AI and animation talk. It can also involve character design, but it's not necessarily a design talk either. It could even, involve level design, but it's not a level design talk. You're starting to see the trend here, right? But it is entirely about aspects and tools that game devs need to just be aware of to create more expressive characters in their games. But let me start off with something here real quick. There's something that's called the ultimatum game. And the way that works is there's two people standing in front of me, and you're both listening to these rules, so you both know what's going on. And to the first person, I hand $100. And the rules are that person, if I'm handing it to you, for example, you must offer a portion of that $100 to the person next to you. Remember, they're hearing these rules. If that person accepts your offer, you both keep your amounts, and that's fine. I leave, have at it. If that person rejects your offer, I take back the $100 and you both get nothing. So the question then is, how much do you offer? Now, this is much better if we're all sitting in the same room, because I love hearing people chime out. And of course, there's the one wise ass who knows this and gives the right answer. But the thing is, when they did this live, well, let me review. Okay, so just for terminology's sake, we have the giver and the receiver. So I'm handing the giver this money. Okay, how much do you offer to the receiver? Well, in theory, a fair offer is $50, right? Giver gets 50, receiver gets 50, we're done. The thing is, the typical offer is about 30 when they do this. So the giver keeps $70. The optimal offer is $1. Well, wait a minute, hold on, that doesn't seem right. Well, no, the receiver gets $1 instead of 0. It's perfectly rational for him to say yes. He had more than when he started. But the giver maximizes what they keep of $99, which is perfectly rational. I'm going to keep the most, but also make the giver happy. But you have to assume that both actors are perfectly rational. Or in this case, the giver has to assume that the receiver is, right? Now, you could write a computer program to do this. Let's solve this. And it's like basically this. We're going to keep increasing the giving amount until, well, is the receiver getting more than he started with? Yes. And the giver is keeping the maximum. Great. So $1, right? Here's the problem, is that there's emotions in charge for both people. Well, for the giver, for example, desire, greed, for example, fear of rejection, obviously, because then you're not going to get any money at all if you get rejected. There's some generosity. It wasn't mine to begin with. I can share some of it. Altruism. Oh, I want to help out this person. The funny thing is, people actually do this when they know that the receiver is a computer and it's fake money. It's like, no, you're not actually helping out the person at all because it's monopoly money. Who cares? Pride or shame. I want the receiver to think of me as a good person. But they actually do this with the computer too. It's like, no, the receiver is a computer. They're not going to think of you as anything. Maybe they want the person taking the study to. Maybe they want to think of themselves as a good person. The receiver has the same thing: desire, greed, a sense of fairness. Hey, there should be some sort of split, right? Gratitude. Well, it's nice that he gave me some, right? Or jilted, slighted, hurt. Well, what's wrong with me? Why didn't they give me any? But most importantly is possible spite. Well, if he won't give me any to me, I'm gonna let him have his. Fine, screw you, and he's gonna get nothing either. Even less logical, though, than this is that neurology is involved as well. Matter of fact, if you give somebody an oxytocin spray, oxytocin is like the bonding hormone. People get it through hugging, mothers through childbirth, through nursing. It's increased through intimate contact, stuff like that. If you give people an oxytocin spray, it increases the generous offers. On the other hand, if you lower their serotonin, the feel-good hormone, actually will increase the rejections. So, oh my God, there's psychology and neurology involved here. It's also not all about the other person. As I mentioned, people still give when they know it's a computer, maybe because they don't want to be judged by the scientist, or they're being judged, themselves. I want to feel that I'm good. So, okay, right. So we have to have this mental model. The giver has to go, well, what is the receiver thinking? Or more importantly, what's the receiver thinking of me, in order to come up with this number of how much do I give? Well, okay, great. So we have to take into account the other player's situation. What does this person have now? What will they have after? Our decision needs to take into account the other player's mental model of the situation as well. The other player knows what I have, and he knows what I'll have after. But this is all math, right? Yeah, this is easy. Yeah, unfortunately, we have to include empathy. How are they going to feel about the situation? How are those feelings going to affect the decision? How do I balance my desires with that other person's? The interesting thing is, for parents, the terrible twos happen because a child has not, they've developed a sense of self, but they have no awareness of other people's mental models or their emotions. These are basically 2-year-olds or sociopaths. The problem, though, is that unfortunately, so are most of our AI agents in games, is they need to know how we're feeling. We need to know how they're feeling. They need to respond even to other NPCs. So we have this psychology over rationality thing with the ultimatum game, even in Prisoner's Dilemma, which, the Prisoner's Dilemma, standard game theory stuff. Okay, well, each person serves 5 years. If they both betray, if they both stay silent, they serve 6 months. Everybody knows that. But so how do you solve this? I need to get into the mind of what the other person's thinking. Are they going to stay silent or they betray me? Poker, which I play a lot of poker. You have to get into the other person's mind. Sometimes it doesn't even matter what the cards are. Also, in things like sports, baseball, basketball, football, there's a lot of psychology in it. As a matter of fact, it is mathematically proven through tens and tens of years of stats that if it's fourth down and less than 2 yards, you're actually better off going for it. And yet, everyone punts on fourth down, unless it's like fourth and inches, right? Why? What if you're better off just going for it? You're probably going to make it. If you fail, what are the people going to think about you? Oh my God, well, see, look at it. He didn't make it. He should have punted. That's what you're supposed to do. Mathematically, no, never mind the math. You screwed it up. Fire the coach. Psychology over rationality. Now, how do we do artificial psychology, though, right? Our agents don't really have psychology. Our players have psychology, though. How can we lever our players' psychology to create the illusion of it in our agents? And that's a lot about what I'm covering. So I'm going to play you a video, and I want to ask you, what is this person feeling? And it'll change throughout, but what is this person feeling? It's going to repeat them here real quick, all 3 of the segments. What that's called is the Kuleshov effect. You can tell by the camera work. It was done hundreds something years ago. And um, in case it's not obvious, the clip of the actor is exactly the same in all three of those. And when they originally did this, they showed them to three different groups of people and asked them, what is the actor feeling? And of course, always he's feeling hunger for the soup, always feeling sorrow for the dead child, he's feeling attracted to, aroused by the woman laying there on the couch. No, it's the same dude, and he was just filmed completely separate. But because of the fact that he was so completely neutral, people had to just say, well, I can't read it, so I'm going to assume and project onto it what he should be feeling based on my read of the situation. And if I've watched this probably hundreds of times now, and I still can't stop myself. If you were to rewatch this, just search for Kuleshov Effect on YouTube. This is where I pull this from. You will find yourself looking between the eyes, the corners of the eyes, the corners of the mouth, center of the forehead, all of the places. Is there tightness? Is it a frown? Is it a concern? Is it relaxation? Is it a smile? You'll find yourself just scanning immediately to figure out, what is this dude feeling? And you will convince yourself that there's three different reads, even though the clip is the same. Because again, he was so completely neutral. All right, so context matters. People project their own feelings onto the actor. What should the actor be feeling? The only way I can do, what am I feeling about the situation? And that's what happens. So in the absence of any defining information, people project what they believe should be there. Now, their projections may be right or wrong. We can certainly help them out some, right? But most of it has to do with context. All right, so we talked about looking and scanning the face. There's a Twitter account out there, and probably dozens of other places as well, called Faces in Things. And if you sit and watch this, you can't help. Sometimes it's Grumpy Cat, but even birds, and you're just automatically wired biologically to see faces in things because we are born to detect that. You'll notice that newborns, as soon as they can start controlling their eyes, they will find faces in their environment and follow them around the room, more so than other things. We're biologically wired to recognize them because faces actually trigger something in our brain called the fusiform gyrus. It's a brain location, whereas objects get processed in the inferior temporal gyrus. Two different brain things. One exception to that is people who are way over on the autistic spectrum actually use the inferior temporal gyrus to process faces as well, which is why that social contact, they're not going to be the ones that are doing the eye contact faces because it doesn't stand out for them. So they were able to figure this out through fMRIs and whatnot. So like I mentioned, babies will detect and follow faces. Faces express most of our emotion. Matter of fact, the facial action coding system by Paul Ekman, they came up with a long time ago. You can read a lot of this kind of stuff. Not just faces in general, but eyes. We are biologically wired to detect eyes and feel connection to eyes. Why is it that you think that Nintendo puts eyes on pretty much everything in Mario Kart, right? Is because we feel connected to them. The other thing that's interesting too is the whites of the eyes is really important. Humans have the highest percentage of visible sclera, which is the white around the iris. And because of that, it's easier to detect the eye direction because you can see where the iris is compared to the whites. So you can detect the direction. You notice how when we're watching the news, we can tell that the host, the anchor, is looking at the teleprompter instead of at the camera. Or I know what you're saying, Brian, about being mirrored. I'm like, I didn't know which way to move my hand. But even if it's a degree off, they're not looking at the camera. They're looking at the teleprompter that's to one side of it or another. But it's also, we can, out of the peripheral vision, I felt someone was looking at me because we will pick up eye directions in our peripheral vision before we pick up anything. It's that wired into us. Okay, so that's kind of important, right? So a lot of stuff gets transmitted through eyes. Attention, where am I looking? Oh, by the way, primates don't follow eye direction, only head direction. So if you're trying to communicate to something to a primate, if there's something over their shoulder, you can't adjust your eyes and look past him. But if you turn your head and show attention, then they'll be like, what are you looking at? Emotion, of course, we can show interest in something. We can show surprise by the increasing of our eyes. Alarm, fear, desire. So now we're going back to the Kuleshov effect, right? What were his eyes trying to tell us? Okay, so how does this help us in games, right? All right, well, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine named Egg Boy. Let's put Egg Boy over here. Now, you'll notice Egg Boy is aptly named. He's basically an egghead and has 2 eggs for eyes on his face. And so that said, Egg Boy is kind of boring. But let's do this with Egg Boy. Now, by the way, this is just a Unity thing. It's all parameterized randoms. I'm giving away my secrets. He occasionally makes eye contact with you, with the camera. By the way, when we are in conversation with somebody face to face, we only make eye contact about 20% of the time. The rest of the time, we're looking off different places, not necessarily at something, but just not at eyes. And so I put this in there. Egg Boy only makes eye contact about 20% of the time, and for varying lengths of time. But you notice his head is moving, his eyes are moving. Okay. Another thing, this is great when I'm doing this in person, because I love having people call out. But I want you to think, what is Egg Boy thinking right now if I were to do this? What is he feeling? What is Egg Boy feeling? Usually I'll get, if not the direct word, I'll get synonyms of nervous, scared, things like that. But notice, all it is he's moving his head more in farther away from the center. He's moving his eyes more rapidly and for very short periods of time. All right, what if I were to do this? Notice his head's tilting back. He's kind of keeping an eye on us. He's looking around like, dude, what's up? Again, things like suspicious, scared, skeptical, cynical. It's like, what's up with you? How about this? Ladies and gentlemen, that's Tesla, my cat, if you can hear that. Yes, we have a cat named Tesla and one named Curie. But back to Egg Boy. He's not looking for Tesla. But notice his head, he only makes eye contact occasionally. His head's more down. He's looking up at us, keeping his eyes down. Shy, sad, things like that. So, just by the head and eyes alone, we're conveying different feelings. And all it is, again, is parameterized randoms in certain ranges. I change how fast, how far, how much off center, how often. Now, of course, I can go back to what I call the conversational mode. So he's a little more chill. Yeah, we're just chatting. You, me, and Egg Boy. We're just hanging out, having a beer. And then watch. And now I've told it to just revert back to the head being straight and the eyes looking at the camera, and tell me that Egg Boy doesn't feel like he died. Because we've taken away all that really subtle, organic feeling movement. And this kind of reminds you of the NPCs we have conversations with in games, right? So people infer, as we've talked about, given some minimal physiological clues, they infer what they believe is causing them. And a lot of times this is done subconsciously. And again, it can be correct or incorrect. So the more information we can give them, the better, right? Okay. Fritz Heider and Marianne-Simmel at Smith College back in 1944 wrote an article for the American Journal of Psychology, an experimental study of apparent behavior. Definitely an academic sounding title, isn't it? So I want you to watch this. All right. What did you just see? Again, fantastic when I'm in a room full of people. What most people say are things like there's a young couple and a big bully who's beating up the little guy and threatening the girl. Variation, young couple and an angry father. You know, I told you not to see him. You stay away from my daughter, and you are so grounded and everything. Some people I've heard say a mother and a child with a bad guy, or a guy in our Omaha Game Developers Association. When I showed this a number of years ago, he says it's a drug deal gone bad. Wait, what? But what it really is, it's two triangles, a circle, and some lines. Notice that I did not ask you, think about what's going on or what happened. I said, what did you see? Also, by the way, why is it that most people that watch this say that triangles are men and circles are women? And the year before I gave this part of the lecture at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, honest to God, I got off the airplane in San Francisco, went to the restroom, and saw this. And so I took a picture, and then I went to the hotel. And I'm like, oh my God, look here too, and at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. And I realized that people look at you funny when you're taking pictures of restroom signs, so I kind of stopped. But apparently it's not just Heider and Simmel that, and the people who watch that video think triangles are guys and circles are chicks. I guess it's a thing. But the point is, people bring their own narrative to these sorts of things. We do this with animals, right? Dogs, cats, birds, fish, bears. Anthropomorphism is kind of a staple in cartoons. But even on non-anthropomorphic objects, people can't help but interpret actions, relationships between them, the causality, the intent, mood, emotion, everything. Well, how do we tell? Things like the movement speed. Is fast movement joyful or is it angry? When the big triangle was punching the little one, but the little triangle and the circle were dancing around and doing this are they kissing? Are they hugging? Were they happy? Slow movement. Was it menacing or sneaking? Notice when the big triangle was going into the house, he was menacing. But when the little triangle was going along the wall to go see what was going on, he was sneaking. Spatial position is when this little circle was in the corner. Was she resting or cowering? Is it close together? Is it loving or is it aggressive? Is he in his face threatening him, or are they happy to be together? So we have to take these inferences from the total context. So like the Kuleshov effect, we put together entire montages. And perception of one stimulus is affected by proximity to another stimulus. So we can kind of craft meaning out of these numerous atomic actions in our games and other things. Facial, postural, audio, barks of voice lines. And they can be simultaneous or in serial. And we can assemble these different perceptions by the player by putting these things in together in piles like Lego. And we can craft this meaning out of stuff. So let me give you an example. Let's assume we're in some sort of RPG, and I am an NPC in a village, in the town square or in a tavern or something, right? And so I'm standing here, I'm just doing random head look around the environment. And then I do a double take at the player. I rapidly back up half step. I look around rapidly look back at the player, and then slowly back away from the player. All right, well, that sounds like an interesting story. What the heck's going on here? We have some feelings about what is this guy thinking? Okay, let's do this again. Same situation. I'm doing my random head look around the environment. I do a double take at the player. I slowly back up a half step, glance around slowly look back at the player, and then slowly move towards the player. That's a completely different story. So in the first one, was he surprised to see me and he's nervous and, oh my God, I got found out and I need to slowly get away. But in the second one, it's like, oh, okay. Is anybody watching me? I'm going to go ahead and move towards the player now slowly. Now, of course, there could be more to this. Is he coming over to tell me the secret code, or is he coming over to kick my ass? I don't know. So we would need more context, right? But there's two completely different things. And notice the only thing that we're using is head look and forward and backward movement. Different speeds on each of them, but that's the only two components we're using, and we told two completely different emotional stories. So simple things make a difference too. Like the speed of motion, we talked about the fluidity of it. Is it smooth, or is there some sort of stutter step? Micro motions too, like flinches, a half step forward, a half step backward. The head look we talked about. Could it be flinches, double takes like surprise, or the relative axis? Are we looking directly at something, or are we looking partially towards something? Remember Egg Boy, remember? Eye contact with the player, with other agents, with the environment. There's also the power of movement, changing the speed of the action, stopping and starting an action. Is there hesitation, uncertainty, pausing it? Are we preparing to do something like run away, or are we restraining ourselves from doing something? The power of head look, though, too. I could be, looking at various cover points in my environment, and then I double look at one just before moving to it. Imagine you were going to be casting an area of effect spell or throwing a grenade, which in a way is kind of an area of effect spell. And you knew that you're watching this guy looking around, and then you saw him do a double take towards something. Aha, he's going to go over there. Watch this. Boom. Looking at other agents. Agents looking at each other. Imagine you're in an alley, 3 or 4 agents, and they're looking at each other as they're moving towards you and back at you and at each other. They're working together. But what if, of those 4 agents, 3 of them were looking at the same agent, not at each other, but they kept glancing at the same agent and then back at you? Aha, we now know who the boss is, and they're taking their cues from him just by changing who we're doing head look at, because we can't help but infer things like that. Big motions versus small motions. Early silent movie actors had to use exaggerated body and facial actions, and they used music to add emotion. Part of this was because they had to project over a distance. They were used to this because they were stage actors that were being converted. And so people in the back row need to see that I am feeling this and I'm doing this. And so it was very exaggerated and looked completely campy and overblown and out of place eventually, especially now, right? And eventually we'll learn that subtlety works. Facial expressions, subtlety and hand movements, body positioning. Early game characters, we had to use exaggerated body movements. We used barks to reveal emotions and intentions because we couldn't do it graphically. Oh my God, I'm scared. Oh, great. Because we had poor resolution and animation techniques. And admittedly, you look at stuff from, 30, 20, even sometimes 10 years ago, it kind of looks campy and overblown and out of place, just like the silent movie actors did. Okay, so maybe we need to learn how to be subtle. And why does subtlety matter? Okay, well, people sense things that they're not directly focusing on. People physiologically feel things even when we can't explain why, and it takes a shorter time than we realize. There's was an experiment done many years back. It's now referred to as the University of Iowa gambling task. And what they did is they gave you 4 decks of cards in stacks, 2 red and 2 blue. And each of those cards had a amount that you were winning or losing off of them. Now, the blue cards were generally better. There was a kind of a net plus there. Yeah, they had some losers in it, but in general, blue cards made you money. Red cards had some big payouts, but mostly bigger losses. So it was a net minus. Now, notice they didn't tell you this ahead of time. Otherwise, this would have been a little easier. But what they said is they said pick one card at a time and then try to make as much as you can. All right, so here we got 4 decks of cards in front of us. Now, as we remember, the blue ones were generally a net plus, and the red ones are generally a net negative. Okay. Interesting thing, though, is what they found out in watching these people and talking to them afterwards. After about 80 cards, people could explain exactly what was going on. Yeah, these blue ones, they're helping me out. Yeah, sometimes I lose, but most of the times I win. After about 50 cards, people had a hunch that something was amiss, but they couldn't put their finger on it. After 20 cards, they had already started changing their behavior subconsciously, where they were picking more blue cards from red cards. Notice that they didn't have a hunch yet. Not until 50. At 20, they were picking more blue cards. After 10 cards, people had already exhibited physiological stress responses just reaching for the red cards. They wired people up with galvanic skin response things and the same kind of stuff we use in lie detectors, everything. They were having stress reaching for the red cards. Now, think about this in order again. They couldn't tell you what was happening until 80 cards. Suspected something at 50, but they kind of needed to prove themselves out. But they had already started changing their behavior at 20 and already physiologically feeling it at 10. Okay, so why are we doing this again? Back in the day, the cliche was that our average enemy character lasted on the screen for about 7 seconds. So, okay, well, there's not a lot of direct interaction unless there's dialogue or cutscenes, right? Is a Star Trek red shirt. It was going to die. Why should I bother putting anything into it? Does it really matter to put all of this subtlety into a character? All right. Nalini on Body did a thing with her students where the students rated professors on teaching effectiveness over an entire semester. How that class you took last semester, how effective was that professor? Okay, great. Then other participants who had not been in those classes were showed silent video clips of those same professors teaching their classes. And then the interesting thing, though, is that the participants' ratings aligned with that of the full semester students' ratings. So the people who just saw a silent video clip pretty much said the same thing about the professor that somebody had been in there for a whole semester did. Here's the problem. The length of the video that those people were shown of that professor, the silent video, was 10 seconds. In 10 seconds, the participants that watched the video got the same rating. Like, yeah, this is a good professor. This was probably not very communicative. This was horrible. That somebody who had taken the class for the entire semester. Being academics, they're like, all right, let's screw with this a little bit more. Let's do it over again. and they did it for 5 seconds. The ratings still aligned with the people who had been in class for the whole semester. And again, because they're academics, all right, let's try this. And they did it with 2-second silent video clips. People got the same feeling that people who have been in the class for the entire semester did. So don't tell me that if my character is only going to be on the screen for 7 seconds, that what's the point of trying to get something across to the player? So simple techniques can get us a lot of mileage. People are not purely rational, as we talked about with the ultimatum game. They're emotional. People want to engage with emotional characters, and they engage their own psychology. And to do that, people will assume causality, infer narrative, and leverage the player. We can leverage the player's built-in assumptions and expectations about things by just adding simple building blocks, either in serial or parallel, and yanking on the psychological strings that our players have sat down at the computer with, or at the console, or whatever, or at their phone. Never mind, you get the point. So we can also remember that we can be subtle, because players will feel the changes even before they realize that they're there. If you want to basically take my bookshelf here, there's actually more since then. These are a lot of the books that I've read to put together to learn about a lot of these things. And I'll send this to some of your folks here, and go out on your Twitter account. I actually have an image of this very slide. Predictably Irrational, in particular, by Dan O'Reilly, is a fantastic book that has a lot of these examples in it. I have done another lecture on the psychology of numbers, completely different aspect. But a lot of these books actually speak to that too. Also, anything by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Thinking Fast and Slow is a book recently from Daniel Kahneman about stuff. He's a Nobel Prize winner in economics, believe it or not. So fantastic reading material for that kind of stuff. If you want to learn, to be honest, Predictably Irrational by Dan O'Reilly could be subtitled, "Oh my God, we are freaking stupid." So that's probably my daughter's pizza. Sorry about that. But that's it for this. I am very, very willing and happy to stick around for questions. Obviously, because of the nature of this, the questions can go into the chat. And I believe Brian is going to be kind of feeling those. Some other people will say, we had somebody ask this, and absolutely, I would love, not just about this or about AI or psychology, but anything about the game industry, because I've kind of done a few things. So, but yeah, so feel free. I'm going to leave this up unless EB, if you want me to just go ahead and kill my screen off and go full screen, I can just, okay. But questions, have at it. Yes, I can hear your deafening applause, all of you. Well, what, like 7 people here or something? I don't know how many we got.
So I want to firstly thank you for the presentation, Dave. That was quite eye-opening. That was awesome. Let's see, a few people.
I see he did an eye-opening joke there, like Egg Boy, right?
That's right. So let's see. We got a few people that want some pizza as well, so that doorbell came just in time.
You don't want the kind of pizza that my stepdaughter gets. Don't worry about it. And by the time I get it from Omaha to Des Moines, not cool.
Oh yeah. So got a few other people that love Egg Boy. There's one question right here. Thanks, Karen, for asking this one. The question is, what do you think is a particularly good example of a game AI or game AI character? Oh, and she's clapping as well, so you got a little applause.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for the clapping. Yeah, no, God, I hate these questions. The only one worse is what's your favorite game, or what do you? Because I like so many different types of games for different reasons entirely. Usually when I answer those questions at GDC, it's like, what did you work on? But again, so much of it depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So for example, the video clips in the Civilization series of the other leaders, especially later on in Civ 4 or 5 when they were changing the way they reacted to you. Now, of course, that was all pre-recorded, but it gave you a feeling of, okay, yeah, Montezuma's kind of pissed at me right now. But the other problem with answering this question, and yes, I'm dodging around this fairly well, is something that is a cutscene based game, a narrative game, where a lot of the stuff is hand voiced. That didn't. It's a horrible term. Hand hand animated, voiceover, hand authored. Basically not just a cutscene, but this is what the character is going to say and what they're going to look like when they say it at this particular moment. I can't give as much credit to that because it's not AI. It's you're writing a movie. The types of things that I would look for is much more emergent behavior type of stuff of when I did something unexpected or expected for that matter. And the NPC had no idea what I was going to be doing. Did it react to me in a way that made sense? For example, how many of us in an RPG or a shooter, we're in the campaign mode and we decide to unload our gun into the skull of one of our companion NPCs and no one reacts. Well, that's just because, we can't think of everything. We can't put in a reaction to everything, but although I'm working on that, by the way. I didn't just say that out loud, did I? So that's the type of behavior that I'm looking for is reacting to the world around it. If I do something, I'm in the village square and either I do something, alarming, like some sort of spell, even if it's not damaging anyone, but it's something that you would notice, or make a loud noise or something. I want everybody in the square to go, what the heck was that about? Okay, wow. And then continue to check back and be suspicious of me, because that's the way we would act. One of the things I talk about a lot, I do. I didn't invent this, but I became the father of what's called utility AI nowadays because I started calling it utility AI 10 years ago. As I talk about someplace between completely random and absolutely perfectly rational. Remember the ultimatum game. Predictable, rational, and completely random. Someplace is which was the perfect. This was predictable. Someplace over here is an area that is reasonable. I want my players to react to an NPC going, "Ooh, I wasn't expecting that, but I can see why they did it." That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Now, not only in behaviors of, what spell did they use against me, or where did they go, or how, what, combination of attacks, but also in terms of the emotional reactions of I want to, if I do something, have that imagine Egg Boy going, whoa, okay, and get that feeling from him. I don't want to have to use the Kuleshov effect to go, well, Egg Boy didn't move, but because I did this, I bet Egg Boy is feeling that because I'm having to project onto it. I want to see and feel that to some extent. Now, of course, we don't have to exactly show absolutely everything, as people are going to fill in the gaps themselves. So I didn't give you an answer of what a game or a character, but I gave you these are the kind of things that I look for that make me interested, that make me engaged, and actually do that for a lot of other people as well. So sorry, Karen, if I kind of dodged it. So anybody else?
That's awesome. We've got a few more questions. We've got a couple coming in. Let me share this one. This one's actually from Eb. She asked the question of the way that we look for eyes and read other people's faces. Is there a part of that that's cultural or is it universal? And Does AI expression need to be localized if it's not universal?
That's actually a really good question, Evie. I don't know. There's a lot of things that are cultural. Um, as you're aware of things, everything like body positioning and posture, and like we talked about, with the traditional, older Japanese stuff, but it lives on today about how far do I bow? Do I continue to make eye contact while I'm bowing, or am I lowering my head? So there are things like that, but a, a lot of that is going to be reserved to the type of game that you're doing, and the type of character, rather than localizing it for the audience. I would assume. I don't know. Um, but other things, hand gestures, body, postures. You hear a lot of things about. There's things that you don't do in certain European or North Africa, completely different things. Something as simple and cliche as two beers versus two beers. That's just a loose example of how things can differ. Now, are people that are making game character animations saying, well, if the player is in Germany, let's make our NPCs order two beers. If the player is in the U.S., he doesn't order two beers because he's probably going to drink 7 or 8. No, but it's but that is the type of thing that part of it is you have to make sure that, well, I have my emergent animation system doing my AI, and it responds in certain ways like this. Ooh, that's probably not a good way for it to react and and express this if it is in this being shown to this culture. Now, of course, you can also say we'll just leave it out entirely. But it's just thinking about Egg Boy alone, though, I'd have to do the research. Is there a different amount of eye contact that is different for different cultures? That we in the States might be completely okay with the 20% eye contact thing, as I'm trying to do this without the glare of my glasses. I'm glancing at your eyes in the camera, 20% of the time, and I'm looking around. But in someplace else, they may be expecting, well, if you're looking around, it shows that you're not, it's disrespectful to me, it's not engaging. Yeah, so there could be all sorts of stuff like that, and those are things that can be taken into consideration. With Egg Boy, I could change a couple of lines of code and he's going to make eye contact more often randomly. So yeah, those are things that could you put that in? Do they mean things? Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me, Brian.
That was awesome. I really appreciate that answer. Good question, EB.
Stop making eye contact with me, Brian.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Or I'm sorry.
Yeah, be like Egg Boy, just staring at the
That's
screen.
right. Just a little high, a little low. Awesome. Got another question from Alex. Alex says, "Love the presentation. Thank you." And for the question, what do you think about game AI being too clever, and where is the balance?
That a lot of times is entirely based on the type of game and the wishes of the designer. But there's also a lot of psychology that goes into that from the player standpoint. One of the great examples is the game Fear. No, I refuse to call it F period E period A period. But in Fear, people to this day say that it is one of the best AI games out there, and it's actually crap. The devs, including Jeff Orkin, will tell you it wasn't that great. They did use the goal-oriented action planning and everything, which was novel at the time, but it turns out that it collapses under any sort of weight. But the reason that people felt that Fear had good AI was not because of the AI, but it was because of doing some of the things that they did, like barks. For example, speaking of clever AI, they made it so that when you were in situations, against multiple, enemies, that sometimes one of them would flank you. And in playtests, they found out that people really didn't like and got pissed off at getting shot in the head from the side by somebody who flanked them. Never mind that it's, as was proven by that scenario, a perfectly legitimate strategy. They didn't like being flanked. So what did they do? They continued to let the AI flank them. But remember how you could hear the different soldiers talking to each other over their radios or yelling? You could hear them say, I'm going to go around the side, or I'm going to flank him. Aha. I, being the clever player, know that you're going to flank me, and I'm ready for you. It was dumbing down their AI. Well, no, I'll be correct that. The AI was left to be clever, but it was exposing it. There was another great example that Jeff talked about how you could occasionally hear them as, let's say, they started with 4 guys in a room, and okay, we're taking fire, we're down to 3. With 2 of them, they'd say, we're going to need some backup here, and you, of course, as you do, kill the last 2, and then, all right, good, all right, we're done. All right, let's pick up any ammo here, let's move forward. And you'd go down the next hall and you'd run into some guys who were coming around the corner. Oh, there's the backup that the dead guy called for. No, it wasn't backup. It was scripted that after that thing, as soon as you went over that tripwire, those guys are going to come around the corner. And I think they may even said something about, here's the ones we were called, careful, they're here already. And so the perception, and this goes back to what I've just been talking about the past hour, the perception of clever superseded, was it actually good AI? Now, we've all been on the receiving end, I'm assuming, of some sort of hacker who wrote a headshot bot in an online, shooter game. That's actually not hard. Because, hey, can I do a raycast from my gun to your head? Yes, pull the trigger. We actually spend a lot more time as AI programmers. How do we miss convincingly? Again, it goes between perfectly rational and completely random. Is that reasonable? Same sort of thing with shooting. Now, that said, okay, if we just say, here's the raycast to your body, and I'm just going to make a cone and randomly pick stuff in there. No, you know what's much more fun? Is if they're running sideways, the player is running sideways, aim out in front of him so that the random scatter is hitting the walls and the ground and everything in front of them, because they're never going to see it if it's hitting behind them. It feels more fun if the misses are in front of them. Again, so here we are working not only on missing convincingly, but missing in a way that heightens the dopamine rush. Actually, it'd be norepinephrine in there too. Never mind, I won't get into monoamines. But we're psychology, not psychiatric stuff, right? So the on the other side of that spectrum, a lot of my academic friends, and unfortunately it's bleeding over into industry people, of, oh my God, with AlphaGo, beating the Go master, which of course goes back to, when IBM's Big Blue or Deep Blue, or it's one of those blue things, beat Kasparov in chess. I actually have this in another lecture of mine. I have a shot of the audience watching this and Kasparov on the screen, like this. That's not fun. To be the chess master and get schooled by a computer. Notice that IBM, their unit sales of that chess program were not spectacular because nobody wanted to get their ass kicked by the chess game. Same thing with AlphaGo. I found the exact same screenshot of people watching, going again. Well, I forget what his name was, the Go master, and he's sitting there like this. That also is not fun. The goal of the AI, let's see, Soren Johnson, GDC 2008, Playing to Lose, the AI Civilization. Best line ever was, the goal of the AI is to just barely lose. We're the action hero. Notice that at the end of the movie, oh my gosh, how are they going to get through this? You know, there's things blowing up all over the place and they're trapped and everything. And then they just manage to get through it. You know, Rocky just manages to knock out any number of guys, any of those things. And that feels cool for us rather than, yeah, you completely walked away with it. You know, it was easy from the beginning or lost. No, the player is the action hero. So the goal of our AI is to make them feel just barely badass enough. That's the clever part of AI, is how do you just barely lose? Make it challenging enough, but don't make it obvious that we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to let you win. That's the hard part. And in the process, make it believable and tell a story. So again, I'm not really good at exactly answering your questions, but I'm hoping that I'm speaking to what it is that you're trying to get at for yourself.
Absolutely love it. So we've got one more question, and then we'll see if anything comes in through chat while you're speaking to this one.
Sure.
This one is from Evie as well, and this one says, for a dev wanting to put this into practice, which is more helpful, a book on social psychology or taking an acting class, or anything else that you would recommend?
Actually, depends on what you're up to. Yeah, obviously the books, you know, just teaching about how people think, or lectures that are based on books like this one we just watched. But my friend Rez Graham, who he worked on, you know, the Sims stuff, a fantastic AI person. He is in improv groups in the Bay Area. My wife and I went. I've been to one of his programs. They did it was based on the Game of Thrones. It was really funny. But he very much recommends that, because an acting group, read your script, play your part. That's the canned NPCs, you know, that the writers, the voiceover people, the animators are going to do. Improv is, you really have to get involved in what everything am I paying attention to, and how should I react to that? That is selling the character that I am, but also providing information, providing entertainment, working with, it's not just about me, working with my other people, working with the audience sometimes, because a lot of times the improv groups, they ask for seeds that they, you know, to incorporate in. So I have not done that, although some people say that a lot of my lectures and Q&A sessions after are a lot of improv. But I would subscribe to that. I've actually heard a number of other AI devs that, and just game devs in general, have talked about that. My friend Raph Koster, who, you know, lead designer of Ultima Online back in the day, Star Wars Galaxies, etc., accomplished writer and lecturer as well. When I asked him, somebody asked him this question when he was a video guest at our Omaha Game Developers Company: what should I study to be a better game designer in general? So we're not talking necessarily AI. His answer was, to be honest, get a good liberal arts education, because all of that knowledge about the world, whether it be literature, geography, social sciences, any of that stuff, is all of the bits and pieces that you're going to be pulling together to create worlds, characters, experiences. And so the more of a broad base that you have to draw from, you know, the more, all of us who've been, you know, working for any length of time have found ourselves pulling something out of, well, you know, I was watching this movie, or I was reading this book, or I saw an article, or about, you know, just to make this type of world more interesting. For example, I got hooked into with one of the guys I was working with at Pixel Mage back in 2016, reading what were the names of the books? Rational Optimist and Guns, Germs, and Steel. And they're like cultural anthropology type stuff about how things moved over time culturally in different areas of the world, and just all sorts of how did trade start. And you read something like that when you're trying to design a world, and wow, all of a sudden you like, well, now I understand why I need to put such and such here, or why these people react to those other people this way, because it's very similar to how the islanders in Polynesia reacted. It's so there's a lot of information. The last line of my bio for a long time, actually, it's still in there, is kind of tongue in cheek. Dave continues to attend the University of Life. He has no plans to graduate anytime soon. I have since updated that to read, although he may get removed from the program by getting hit by a BMW in San Francisco. Almost got removed from the program. So there's a lot to that, though. It's not just a joke. The University of Life. When I do my utility AI talks, for example, utility AI basically is scoring all of the possible things. What's the best thing for me to do at the time? And I ask students at universities around the country, is all right, where are you going to lunch today? Well, we're actually just going to go to such and such. Oh, really? Why? Well, because we like that. Oh, you like that type of food? Well, there's a fantastic Italian restaurant in Boston that you should go to. Well, no, but that's too far away. Oh, so you like Italian food, but distance matters. Well, there's one here in town, fantastic Italian, but I'll choose something that's like ridiculously pricey. Well, no, but that's too expensive. Okay, so it's what I like, and how time commitment and the cost. And so, okay, if you find one that you like, why don't you eat there every day? Well, because I get tired of it. Okay, so how long has it been since the last time you had it? And you're putting together all of this information. And that's just in one AI decision of where should I eat lunch? Oh, but no one else likes that type of food. So now there's a social aspect. If you were going out by yourself, you'd pick that restaurant. But since you want to hang out with your friends, we're going to take that one off the table, literally. So now do that with everything about your game. When people ask, well, how would I make an AI to play such and such board game? My first reaction is, how do you make your decisions? What is it? Well, I check it. If the other player has this, then I'll move one of these type of pieces so that I can shout, right. So how do you tell your AI to look at what the other player's position is and choose? All you're doing is codifying how you live. Same thing with level design. Same thing with character design or writing. How would you be you? Now that does go to the acting class. I actually did a short lecture many years ago about Stanislavski, the guy who invented method acting. Basically, he has his 7 rules of who am I, why am I here, what's my motivation, things like that. That's characters design right there, and to an extent it can be expanded into level design and game design as a whole. Make sense, make it interesting, and then put in a lot of these psychological clues that I've talked about here, of to draw people into that world along with you. Make them feel. Don't tell, show. So, anything else?
Well, that was fantastic. Actually, I do not see any more questions coming from anybody in the YouTube channel. So at this point, I think we can call it a wrap. And as other questions come in, we'll make sure we get them to you. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, as always, thank you very much. This
That's
is
it.
this is our April 2020, our first first attempt at going live on online. So
Well,
we'll,
in April of 2024, after all this crap is cleared up,
yeah,
I'll come out and join you folks. It's not that far of a drive, and I definitely could stay to visit Des Moines again.
yeah, absolutely, and we would love to have you here as well.
That'd be a blast.
So go
Just no BMWs though.
no BMW. Go take a look at Dave on Twitter, and your Twitter handle one more time.
It's IA Dave Mark. It's not AI Dave Mark. IA as in intrinsic algorithm, my company.
Oh, not Iowa. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
no, not somebody asked me. Like, yeah, that's right. It was you guys. Why is this thing Iowa Dave Mark? No, and it's not any Dave Mark either. So no, it stands for intrinsic algorithm, which is the name of my company. So and it's just kind of stuck for 14, 15, 18 years, a long time.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but anyway, I appreciate you guys having me out, and just feel free to reach out to me. Absolutely.
And we really appreciate it. And everybody, let's continue the conversation on Slack. Go hop on there. Dave, you are more than welcome also to join us on there and continue some of this conversation if you'd like. But
Yeah,
otherwise, if
shoot me
there's,
an invite link to the Slack channel.
I will right after this. You're gonna see it right in an email. So yeah, thanks a lot, and we'll call this a wrap. Thank you very much, and have a great night.
Thank you. Take care.